Thank you very much for your presence here. We'll speak English if everybody agrees with it. It's my pleasure to announce here the presence of Lauren Southern. And the subject of this meeting here is what happened to her in the last few days in the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Gerald. My country used to be a bastion of free speech, and it is no longer. The free speech was curtailed. The hate crime, hate speech, which was brought in under Tony Blair's socialist government, has been continued. And has actually got worse under Theresa May when she was Home Secretary, and of course the woman is now the Prime Minister of Britain. Lauren had free movement across Europe. She went to Flanders, Belgium. She travelled through France, and then she was stopped by Kent police at Calais and prevented coming into our country under the Terrorism Act. She's been detained by Kent police. Now, Kent is in the southeast of England. It's in my constituency. I live in Kent. I brought my children up in Kent. And over the past few years, under the so-called Tories' austerity, 800 police officers were taken off the ranks and made redundant. And so we're wasting police resources, Kent police resources, on holding back a girl who is Canadian, who's actually a Commonwealth citizen, and in her passport it actually says the Queen requests that she has free and unimpeded travel. Yet Kent police will hold her back, but they've allowed 500 jihadis to slip in. I'm not saying it's Kent Police's fault. I'm not saying that it's the border forces' fault, because they've also had cutbacks. But when you've allowed 500 jihadis to slip back into your country, Frontex, the EU's border agency, has said that there's 1,000 jihadi brides heading back our way. And when I requested 2 weeks ago to have this urgently on the agenda, and we were discussing terrorism and the funding of jihadi terrorism, this place refused to do it. And then we've also got in our country around about 30,000 known extremists, jihadi extremists, that we just don't have the resources to monitor. It takes around about 30 to 40 officers to follow one person around the clock. We don't have that type of resources. But, you know, it's an easy grab to stop somebody like Lauren at the border and prevent her coming into my country. There's a guy called Majid Nawaz that my British colleagues will probably know. He's a former Muslim, and he is also a fellow of the Quillim Foundation, and he's a journalist on LBC. And he said a couple of days ago, this may be the first time that UK border control have enforced medieval Islamic blasphemy law and medieval Islamic homophobia in one clean sweep. And he was talking about Lauren. So to detain her and other people that we stopped coming into my country over the weekend is absolutely disgraceful. You know, and I speak as somebody that has no faith, but I absolutely uphold the right of Christians, Jews, Sikhs, Hindus to go about your business, your religion, unimpeded, providing that you do it peacefully. And in our Christian country, you will live according to our laws and our democracy and our freedoms, not Sharia law. So I think we've really got our priorities very, very wrong in my country. And I'm really ashamed to say, as we leave the European Union, this young lady is actually allowed to go around the different countries, the 27 states of the European Union. And my country, which is seeking to be outward, and an outward trading nation, and an open trading nation, we close our border to a Canadian citizen, and I condemn that. Anyway, I could say a lot more on this, and I think we probably will after Lauren's spoken, but really this conference is about her. And I'd like to hand the floor over to you, Lauren.
So thank you so much for having me here today, especially to Janice for inviting me out. It's a rather bizarre situation finding yourself locked out on the other side of a border alone, thinking that the entire state is against you, but to be called up by some people that still represent freedom of speech and the values that I thought the UK was founded on, to be called up by you and invited here to speak freely is an absolute pleasure, and it's good to know there are some good people who still hold those values in the United Kingdom, and it's not all lost. But to get into what happened to me, on Sunday night I got on a bus from Belgium to head towards Calais to go over to Dover and into the UK. And I was stopped by the UK border police, who asked me to take my bags off of that bus and bring them in. And they began to search my bags and put me in a detention center. I figured that the situation might be comparable to the situation with American journalist Brittany Pettibone and activist Martin Zellner from Austria, where they were detained and actually put in a prison for 3 days due to their political opinions. However, a little bit into my detention, they handed me over to the UK Kent police, and an officer came into the room and handed me this information leaflet, which says, Schedule 7 Terrorism Act. And they told me that I'm now being detained under the Schedule 7 Terrorism Act. Here's what I need to know. I do not have effectively any rights, at least for the first hour. I do not even have the right to remain silent. I was brought into a small questioning room, one that you might see in the movies with the little tape recorder on the table, and they began to question me on all manner of things, beginning with, how would I describe myself politically? What is a nationalist? They moved on to, are you religious? How religious are you? Christian? How far Christian are you? Yes, I am Christian. I am not a Christian extremist of any sort. And it got very strange when they moved on to the question after that, where they said, how do you feel about people running trucks into individuals to kill them, specifically Muslims? To which I nearly laughed, not because I think that's a funny matter at all, but to think that myself, a young Christian woman from Canada, who has never been part of any terrorist organization, I've never endorsed any terrorist organization, I have no criminal record whatsoever, I'm sitting in a room with the Kent police being asked how I feel about running over Muslims with trucks. It was just absolutely absurd. Now, after that, they asked me how I felt about right-wing terrorism, to which I once again told them, you can watch any of my social media, you can look at any of my videos online, not once have I endorsed terrorism. I think it is a horrific, evil thing, no matter who it comes from. The right, the left, Muslims, Christians, does not matter. And there was no point which they told me why I was detained under Schedule 7. Whether they suspected me of terrorism, none of it. There was no reason given. After 6 hours of being held, they ended the investigation. And I will mention that the Kent police are perfectly lovely people. I assume that these orders came from above to ask me these questions and to detain me under Schedule 7, the Terrorism Act. After being detained for 6 hours, they gave me a form, and it says here, you have asked for leave to enter the United Kingdom as a visitor for up to 5 days. However, by your own admission, on the 24th of February 2018, you were involved in the distribution of racist material in Luton. I believe that your actions whilst in the United Kingdom present a threat to the fundamental interests of society and to the public policy of the United Kingdom. The event that they are referring to is an event that I never at any point said or admitted to being racist material. It was a social experiment I was doing with a few people in Luton, referring to a Vice article claiming Jesus Christ may have been a gay man. We decided to do a spin-off and see how the public would react to other religions being called gay or LGBT religions. So we came out with signs, pretended to be left-wing presenters, and said, Allah is a gay god. Allah is a god for gays and homosexuals as well. To which the police confiscated our material. I never violated any laws. I cooperated with them. And yet, I guess I got the end of my social experiment. I got the result. Vice is perfectly allowed to state Jesus Christ may be gay. If you say Allah may be gay, you get detained under Schedule 7 Terrorism Act and banned from the country for racism. What in that statement has to do with race, I cannot tell you. It seems more like the UK is bringing back ancient blasphemy laws. That's what this seems like. The great shame here, of course, as unfortunate as it is that my friends were put in prison effectively for 3 days, that I was detained and banned from a country, as great shame as that is, the greater shame here is that I worry that the United Kingdom, which does face problems from extremism, does genuinely face problems from radical Islam and Islamic terrorism, they are getting to a point where people will no longer be able to question the problems introduced here. I am a Canadian citizen, a part of the Commonwealth. I speak the language. I love the culture. I love the UK in general. I came in legally. I intended to stay for the amount of time that I said I would stay. I had booked a hotel with my own money, and I pose no threat, have no criminal record. And yet the Kent Police's time was used to detain me and to question me on these things. The great shame is that not only is free speech being curtailed, but people who are coming in illegally with genuinely radical views are being overlooked. You have the police ignoring situations like the one in Telford, where young girls are being assaulted and raped because they are too afraid of being called racist or Islamophobic, whereas they aren't afraid of being called anti-Christian or anti-white because they ask me whether I'm going to, how I feel about running cars into people. They aren't afraid of this. So it seems the UK has their priorities utterly out of control, utterly out of order. And I think it's a wonderful thing that we've been brought together today to question that and to challenge what the UK is focusing and spending their money on, because there are genuine problems with extremism, there are genuine issues that need to be investigated by the police, but a young Canadian girl coming in to visit her friends is not one of them.
Thank you very much.